Teachers, what's the coolest thing you've confiscated of a child? Story 1. Weed. And I like to think I did it in style. When I was young, I did a side gig as a high school teacher for a semester. I had first and second period with this class of 15-year-olds, mostly boys. Before the first hour begins, I see how one of them excitedly shows something in his pencil case to his mate. They sat in the first row, so when they whispered something like, "Whoa, where'd you get it from?" and "How much?" it was quite obvious they have a bit of weed there. Stealth 0 out of 100. Technically speaking, I should have reported them there and then, even involving police, since weed is illegal where I live. They would have been in a frick ton of trouble. I could have also done nothing, but what I did instead is, when they all left for the break, I locked the door from the inside, opened that pencil case, and pocketed the weed. The looks on their faces when they were back, priceless. They knew I knew. They knew I knew they knew, but it's not like they could have asked me to return their weed. The quality was so-so, and it was barely over a gram. This was 15 years ago, and it's the only time I knowingly stole something. I don't regret it. Story 2. Well, this is my freaking time to shine. My coworker and I had a mild prank war going on. Somehow the students caught wind and decided to instigate by stealing things from his room and taking it to mine, and vice versa. Here are some of the things I've had to take from them and return to him. His car keys, his entire desktop computer, portraits of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, pumpkins from his Halloween decorations, his desk chair, his car keys again, a student desk, his travel mug with his name on it. At this point, I'm convinced my coworker just doesn't want his car. And somehow, in the 5 minutes between his class and mine, they managed to flip all the desks in his classroom upside down. I'm not making this up. Story 3. There was a big conspiracy of exam paper trading going on around the area my school is located in. Some kid figured out a way to get the independent exam that several of the schools would purchase each year. He sold copies to anyone who would buy them, including our students. We confiscated a copy of the exam with a different school logo on it before it was issued to our students. Eventually, my school figured out we couldn't buy exams from this seller anymore, as the papers for most subjects, English, math, chemistry, etc., always made it to the kids through the black market. To my knowledge, the seller was never caught. You know, as I got older, I realized there's 2 ways basically to go through school. You can play by the book and do what you're supposed to do and just do your best to hit the mark for all the objectives that you're given, either by your teachers or your coaches, parents, or whoever else. And this is also a pretty decent model of life after you graduate and start living in the real world. There will always be tasks to complete and work to be done, whether it's a job, a career, a house chore, bureaucratic obligation, or family responsibility. But the second way that you can go through school, I think, models the real world just as well. People are, at their core, just trying to get by and looking out for themselves and their loved ones any way that they can. And sometimes that means devising unconventional ways of gaming the system. And I think there are some solid life lessons with both paths. This kid was thinking outside the box and probably learned some real-world life lessons on how dubious actions can sometimes get you ahead in life. But, of course, there's always a risk of natural consequences to face as well. Story 4. Mom used to be a teacher in the 90s. She confiscated a small device, looks like a really small calculator the size of a hand, that translates words from English to Spanish, French, and Japanese. The student was too distracted by that device to pay attention in class, and she asked the student to get it from her after class. The student never showed up, didn't go to school the next day, and the family moved to a different town after a week. I think it has something to do with family drama. I was 5 or 6 at the time, and I played with it every day. Now that I'm older and have an interest in learning languages, I realize how that must have been very useful back when Google and smartphones weren't a thing yet. Story 5. Scorpion in a jar. The kid had put in leaves, twigs, and even some smaller bugs for it to eat, making a real habitat. However, he was clumsy as heck and had a top locker above a concrete floor. No way I was going to risk him smashing the jar and letting it loose in the corridor. Gave it back to him at the end of the day with very clear instructions it was not to return to school. Yes, I am in Australia, but in the south, so wasn't a particularly venomous scorpion. The sting would have caused about the same level of irritation as a bee sting, as for someone non-allergic. Story 6. When I was a student teacher, I caught a kid stealing Star Trek Next Gen novels from the school library. I knew the kid was in a horrible family mess, as they kept moving due to evictions, drugs, and violence. He never had time to settle in a school before he was moving yet again. I took the books back to the library, went home that night, and the next day gave him all my copies. Hope his dang parents let him keep them. He and I discussed the purpose of learning a dead language like Latin, my subject, and comparing it to Star Trek's Universal Translator helped him connect. It's been 30 years. I still think of him. Story 7. Her mother's vibrator. She brought it to school, age 8, and told her friends it was her, the student's, tension reliever, and that her mother told her to rub it across her forehead when she felt mad. She then had all of her classmates do the same. To be fair, I didn't confiscate it, my in-room intervention specialist did, and my IS had no idea what it was, so she took it with her bare hands, put it in her pocket, and carried on with her day. Later on, she tried to hand it off to me, and I clued her in. Just another reason my IS that year hated me with a burning passion. Story 8. Not a teacher, but when I was a student in 8th grade, we made muzzle-loading weapons, very small pistols and tiny cannons, in woodworking class, out of wood, scrap metal, springs, and matchboxes. We got the powder from dismantling fireworks and used dried peas for ammo. We got the idea from watching Hornblower, and after that, a few other kids thought it was cool as well. It went well until the teacher saw us dueling outside the school area. Many parents were called. My dad said it was the most fun parent-teacher meeting ever. Story 9. My mom worked in administration at a middle school. Whatever was confiscated had to be claimed by parents. This was the 90s and early 2000s, so lots of Gameboys. If they weren't claimed within a year, they were basically free game. Pun not intended. I got so many Gameboys. I would take them to GameStop and trade in like 9 of them for various games and stuff. Dang, what a great childhood. Sucks for those kids, but I guess they didn't want to tell their parents they took their games to school. Story 10. One of my teachers took my yo-yo and tried to do a trick she once knew and smashed a window. One of my teachers took my yo-yo and said I was pretty good at this back in the day. He then proceeded to do about 5 tricks in succession. We were all impressed. I was very casual, and he gave me this smug look and said, "Show me your best trick." I shamefully put the yo-yo back in my bag. Story 11. Live dragonflies. He was a little 4-year-old boy that would never listen to any of the rules and generally just cause a lot of trouble. Anyway, he would catch dragonflies without harming them. When you told him to release them, he would open his backpack and 2 or 3 dragonflies would fly out. You would not believe your eyes. Story 12. A lot of drugs. Some really awesome lighters, a number of flick knives, knuckle dusters, and my personal favorite, a kitten. He found it on the way to school, brought it with him, and had it in his locker, with lots of airflow and a blanket for comfort. I caught him trying to smuggle a saucer of milk to it. I'm going to start to see how often we get cat stories and get my cat Moosh to comment on them when they pop up. So Moosh, what have you got to say about this one? Any comments? Right into the microphone, please. No comments on this one. We'll check back in later. Story 13. Frozen water bottle full of frozen margarita he was passing to his friends. 8th grade homeroom, so 13-year-olds sharing a cocktail at 8 a.m. It was actually kind of clever hiding in plain sight. It did just look like a bottle of frozen water, but my teacher sensed something was up. These children aren't usually drunk. Story 14. A redback spider from the gently closed palm of a 7-year-old boy's hand. Almost every recess for a month before I figured out a way to make him stop. He was never bitten. Just had a war flashback to a year 8 boy bringing a baby eastern brown snake into the labs. I did not confiscate it. We had to evacuate and get the snake catcher in. Guess where that kid is now? Jail. He's in jail. Story 15. I took 6 bullets off a first grader. When I asked him where he got them, he said, from the gun. I then asked how he got them out of the gun, and he made the movement with his hands that showed he ejected the shells. I took him to the office. While he was there, I checked his book bag to see if he had a gun in there. Nope, just a baggie full of credit cards with 15 different names on them. Nothing happened to the child or parent. Story 16. I had a teacher confiscate and pay for a raunchy drawing. We had a really good artist in our science class, and during the lesson, he drew our science teacher as one of Jack's French girls. She was so impressed with the work, she said, "Wow, that's incredible. Highly inappropriate, but incredible. Wait right there." Got her purse out and gave him 10 pounds for it while explaining why you should only draw life models and not in science class. Story 17. A raw egg spray-painted silver. A live bird caught outside, a homemade hand buzzer, a luchador mask. Story 18. On a ferry to France with about 80 kids, some brought Nerf guns. I tell them to be careful and not fire them in public, or I'll have to take them. By the time we're at Calais, my colleagues and I have all the Nerf guns. Cue all-out Nerf wars on the corridors once the kids went to bed that night, and every night of the trip. Story 19. My teacher confiscated a phone case. Just the phone case, not the phone. I've done that. Stupid floating glitter phone case 2 girls spent like 20 minutes playing with instead of doing their work. Story 20. Not a teacher, but one time a teacher confiscated a kid's PSP. It got stolen overnight, so she had to buy him a new one. Physics was tense from then on out. Dang, that sucks. Unless he stole it and then made the teacher buy him another one. Boom, instant profits. Story 21. Not a teacher, but I once heard of a teacher who confiscated a World War II grenade, or something similar, off a kid who got it from his grandfather. The bomb squad wasn't explosive. I think the kid got it back, and I'm assuming he got a good talking to about there's some stuff you shouldn't bring to school. Story 22. An almost life-size Chucky doll. You could swap in and out a bat or a knife. It also had several different things it would say. It became kind of our classroom mascot. Every day before the kids got in class, I would move it around the room to a new place. I would play dumb until I noticed and act surprised. Story 23. Not a teacher, but my teacher stole my hentai manga, and I saw him reading it after class. Man is a true G. Never got my book back, though. Your teacher was a man of culture. Story 24. I was the kid. An imitation gun that used to belong to my grandfather. The thing was ancient and was a simple single-shot percussion cap pistol. The more I think about it as an older, less stupid person, the more I worry that it was an actual gun, since he was a policeman. Never got it back, that's for sure. Story 25. Knives, drugs, boxing gloves, brought to school for a fight club, homemade bong with no cone piece, shiv made from an offcut of some type of acrylic made in manual arts, spear made from a bed frame. Story 26. Not a teacher, but in my old school, a kid had a water gun and was squirting the kids with it. So when the teacher confiscated it, she began squirting him. Best teacher moment I have ever seen. Story 27. When I was a casual teacher, I confiscated a knife from a 5-year-old. He threatened me with it when I tried to get him to do his work. It was my first week. Story 28. A dill pickle dough. It was found in the school garden. The kid came up to me and said, "I found a ding-dong in the garden, and I'm taking it home for Mom." I was not professional that day. Story 29. Not a teacher, but my teacher took my Mighty Beans, TM, in 2010 and still hasn't given them back, so I'm guessing she thought they were pretty cool. Story 30. Took a pair of handcuffs during the second period today. Got a lot of grief when I walked into the office with them. Story 31. I always wonder what the teacher did with Dad's XXX corn mag I brought to school when I was 7. It's probably why you gotta leave early that day. Story 32. Not a teacher, but a student. I had made Thor's hammer in shop class. Principal took it for making a weapon. Story 33. My teacher confiscated Vaseline because they were convinced it was an electronic device. Story 34. My teacher confiscated a blade of a pipe saw. The kid didn't even get in trouble. Story 35. A note that said, "School makes me feel like a dog waiting to be euthanized." Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.